my fiancée said. I'm going on a solo trip to recharge. Then a friend sent me photos of her on a yacht with her ex. I didn't argue. I just packed her things, tossed them on the curb, changed the locks, and terminated the lease. When she got back, she called 31 times. I, 29M, thought I had found my person. Then everything fell apart in the most spectacular way possible. The morning she left, my fiancée kissed my forehead and told me she needed some time alone to recharge before our wedding in 3 months. She'd been stressed about work, about the wedding planning, about everything really. I understood. I even packed her favorite snacks for the trip and drove her to the airport myself. She said she was going to a wellness retreat in Colorado. No phones, no distractions, just meditation and hiking. She'd be back in 10 days, refreshed and ready to tackle our final wedding preparations. I kissed her goodbye and told her I loved her. She said it back, but something felt different about the way she said it. That was Tuesday morning. By Thursday evening, I was getting worried. Not because she wasn't calling. She'd specifically said the retreat had a no-contact policy, but because something in my gut felt wrong. I'd learned to trust that feeling over the years. Friday afternoon changed everything. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a message from Jake, a mutual friend from college. The message just said, "Dude, check your DMs, now." My stomach dropped before I even opened Instagram. The photos hit me like a physical blow. There she was, my fiancée, on what looked like an expensive yacht somewhere tropical. She was wearing the red bikini I'd bought her for her birthday last month. But she wasn't alone. Her ex-boyfriend, the one she'd sworn was ancient history, had his arms wrapped around her from behind. In another photo, they were kissing. Not a friendly peck. A deep, passionate kiss. The kind of kiss that told a story I didn't want to read. Jake had included a screenshot showing the location tag. Turks and Caicos. Not Colorado. Not a wellness retreat. A romantic getaway with the man she'd supposedly gotten over 2 years ago. I sat in my office cubicle, staring at these photos, feeling like the world had shifted off its axis. People walked by, discussing mundane Friday afternoon office things, while my entire life crumbled on a 6-inch screen. The rational part of my brain suggested maybe there was an explanation. Maybe these were old photos. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But the timestamp on the post was from yesterday, and I recognized the bracelet on her wrist, the one I'd given her just last week. I called in sick for the rest of the day and drove home in a daze. Our apartment, the one we'd been sharing for 2 years, suddenly felt like a crime scene. Her coffee mug was still in the sink from Tuesday morning. Her engagement ring was conspicuously absent from her finger in those photos, and I now noticed it wasn't on our shared nightstand either. She'd taken it off before leaving. That detail hit harder than the photos themselves. I spent Friday night in a strange state of calm. The initial shock had given way to something colder, more calculated. I wasn't going to be the guy who called crying and begging for explanations. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Saturday morning, I got to work. I started with her belongings. 2 years of shared life meant her stuff was everywhere. Clothes in the closet we'd organized together. Her skincare products cluttering our bathroom counter. The books she never finished reading stacked on her side of the bed. The little succulent plants she'd insisted would brighten up the space. I packed everything methodically. Not with anger. Anger would have meant throwing things around, breaking stuff. This was surgical. Every item of clothing folded properly. Her makeup organized in the same little containers she preferred. Even her house plants carefully placed in boxes with holes for ventilation. It took most of Saturday to pack 2 years of a shared life into boxes and suitcases. Sunday morning, I called a locksmith. By noon, the locks were changed. Every key she had was now useless. Then I did something that would have seemed impossible to me just days earlier. I went to our property management company and terminated our lease. We'd always been month to month, and the building had a waiting list. They were surprisingly accommodating when I explained I needed to break the lease immediately due to changed circumstances. The early termination fee was worth every penny for the clean break it provided. By Sunday evening, everything she owned sat neatly stacked on the curb outside our building. I'd used tarps to protect her belongings from potential weather, but I wasn't bringing them back inside. I'd even left a note explaining that the locks had been changed and the lease terminated. No emotion, just facts. I spent the rest of Sunday looking at studio apartments online and drinking the expensive whiskey we'd been saving for our wedding toast. The irony wasn't lost on me. Monday and Tuesday passed in a blur of apartment hunting and paperwork. I'd taken vacation days, telling my boss I had a family emergency. It wasn't technically a lie. My family structure had definitely experienced an emergency. I found a decent studio apartment across town and put down a deposit. The landlord could accommodate a quick move-in. Everything was falling into place with an efficiency that surprised me. Wednesday morning, exactly 1 week after she'd left for her solo retreat, she returned. I know this because she called me at 7:23 a.m. I was in my new studio, sitting on the floor since I hadn't bought furniture yet, drinking coffee from a paper cup and scrolling through IKEA's website. When her name popped up on my phone, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not longing. Just a mild curiosity about what she'd say. I didn't answer. She called again immediately. Then again. By the fourth call, I turned my phone to silent and watched it light up repeatedly on the floor next to me. The calls kept coming. Between 7:23 a.m. and 9:45 a.m., she called 31 times. I counted. After the calls stopped, the texts began. They started confused, then became frantic, then angry, then pleading. The evolution was almost fascinating from a psychological perspective. The first text asked where I was and why her key wasn't working. The last one, sent around midnight, was 3 paragraphs of apologies mixed with accusations. She was sorry, but also I was being unreasonable. She could explain everything, but also I should have trusted her. She loved me, but also I was controlling and paranoid. The cognitive dissonance was remarkable. Update 1. Thursday brought a new development. She showed up at my office. Security called me down to the lobby, where I found her sitting in one of those uncomfortable visitor chairs, still tan from her tropical getaway. She looked good, rested, glowing, the way people do after expensive vacations. It was hard to reconcile this refreshed version of her with the frantic person who'd called me 31 times the day before. She started talking the moment she saw me, words tumbling out in a rush. The retreat had been canceled last minute, and her ex had happened to be traveling to the same area for work. They'd met up as friends, nothing more. The photos were misleading. She'd never stopped loving me. I listened without interrupting, watching her performance with detached interest. She was good at this. The tears came at just the right moments. Her voice cracked in all the appropriate places. If I hadn't seen those photos, hadn't noticed the missing engagement ring, I might have believed her. When she finished, I told her I understood her position, but that our engagement was over. I wasn't angry, I explained. I just couldn't move forward with someone whose idea of handling pre-wedding stress involved secretly vacationing with an ex-boyfriend in the Caribbean. She tried to argue, but I was already walking back to the elevator. Security had instructions not to let her up to my floor. That afternoon, I blocked her number and all her social media accounts. Clean breaks required commitment to staying broken. Update 2. Over the next few weeks, she tried various approaches to reconnect. She sent flowers to my office with apologetic notes. She showed up at my gym. She even contacted my sister, trying to get family members involved in mediating our misunderstanding. My sister called me after that conversation, mostly to tell me she thought I'd handled everything perfectly. She'd never really warmed up to my ex-fiancé anyway, though she'd kept that opinion to herself until now. Apparently, there had always been something that felt performative about her, according to my sister's exact words. The most telling moment came 3 weeks after her return when I ran into some of her friends at a coffee shop near my old neighborhood. They approached me with a mixture of curiosity and accusation, wanting to know why I'd been so cruel and heartless about what they called a simple misunderstanding. One of them actually said I should have been grateful that my fiancé was honest enough to tell me she needed space, instead of just cheating outright. The logic was breathtaking. Apparently, lying about a solo retreat while secretly vacationing with an ex qualified as honesty in their social circle. I realized I'd been living adjacent to a group of people whose moral framework was entirely foreign to me. The relief of escaping that world was overwhelming. Update 3. 2 months later, I was settling into my new life quite well. The studio apartment had been furnished with simple, functional pieces that were entirely my choices. No compromises. No discussions about whether the couch should be navy or charcoal. I picked charcoal because I liked it. Work was going better too. Without the constant low-level stress of wedding planning and the subtle tension that had been building in my relationship, I found myself more focused and energetic. My supervisor noticed and hinted at upcoming advancement opportunities. Then Jake messaged me again. This time, it wasn't photos. It was a screenshot of my ex-fiancee's social media post announcing her engagement to her ex-boyfriend. Apparently, their reconnection in Turks and Caicos had been more significant than she'd let on. The post was dated just 6 weeks after she'd returned from her trip. 6 weeks. She'd been engaged to someone else 6 weeks after begging me to take her back. The timeline was illuminating. She'd probably been planning to break up with me before the trip, but wanted to secure the new relationship first. When I'd removed that safety net by changing the locks and moving out, she'd panicked and tried to salvage what she could. I found myself laughing out loud in my quiet studio apartment. Not bitter laughter, genuine amusement at the absurdity of it all. I'd been so worried about being the bad guy for not fighting for our relationship, but she'd been planning her exit strategy all along. The final piece of the puzzle came a week later when my building's property manager called me. Apparently, my ex-fiancée had been trying to get information about my new address, claiming she had mail that needed to be forwarded to me. The property manager had correctly refused to provide any information, but wanted to let me know about the attempt. There was no mail. She was fishing for information, probably planning another ambush conversation. The fact that she was still trying to locate me 2.5 months after our breakup, while simultaneously engaged to someone else, told me everything I needed to know about the bullet I'd dodged. Final update. 6 months after that morning, when Jake's photos changed everything, I was having dinner with my sister when she brought up something interesting. She'd heard through mutual connections that my ex-fiancee's new marriage was already having problems. Apparently, the same trust issues that had destroyed our relationship were manifesting in her new one. Her husband had found text messages she'd been sending to yet another ex-boyfriend. My sister was clearly expecting me to feel some satisfaction at this news, but I found I didn't feel much of anything about it. Not schadenfreude, not vindication, not even sympathy. It was just information about someone who used to be important to me, but wasn't anymore. The most remarkable part of the whole experience wasn't the betrayal itself. People cheat and lie. It happens. The remarkable part was discovering my own capacity for decisive action when it really mattered. I'd always seen myself as someone who would fight for relationships, who would try to work things out, who would give second chances. But when the moment came, I'd chosen self-respect over sentimentality. I'd chosen clean breaks over messy reconciliations. I'd chosen to trust my instincts over her explanations. Looking back, that week of packing her belongings and changing locks wasn't revenge. Revenge would have been trying to hurt her the way she'd hurt me. What I'd done was simply remove myself from a situation that was no longer serving me. I'd treated the end of our relationship like any other problem that needed solving, methodically, efficiently, and with a clear goal in mind. The goal had been to end things completely and move forward without looking back. Mission accomplished. These days, I sleep well in my charcoal-colored world, make decisions without committee input, and trust that people's actions reveal their character more clearly than their words ever could. It's a simpler way to live, and it suits me perfectly. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well and letting other people's choices speak for themselves. My ex-fiancee's pattern of behavior caught up with her eventually, just like I knew it would. I didn't have to orchestrate anything or plot any comebacks. I just had to step out of the way and let natural consequences do their work. The 31 missed calls that Wednesday morning had been her panic at realizing the safety net was gone. But from where I'm sitting now, removing that net was the kindest thing I could have done for both of us.